welcome to another Unity 5 from Scratch tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to look at clouds and volumetric fog. This is a scene that I've put together quite quickly using the terrain that I created in the previous tutorial, and I've added a first person character so that we can walk around. Now you might be looking at this big blob of, well, it's fog actually over here sitting in the middle of the terrain. We've already looked in previous tutorials at fog itself for the background and how fog only sits on the actual geometry, not on the sky. So this is just a solid sky color which happens to be the same color as the far distant fog. Now all fog is calculated based on its distance from the actual camera, so that it gets thicker the further away it is. And that's what's happening here with this, what is a sphere. This particular fog is called spherical fog, and it works by calculating the distance between the camera and the outside of the sphere itself and then towards the center of a sphere. So it's quite easy to calculate for a sphere because each distance on the outside of the sphere is the same distance from its actual center. So the math involved is quite easy. Now we can walk into this fog. Actually, I lie, we can't because I've got it sitting with a box collider around it. Let me just turn that off. I've got it on a cube, and you can see that over here. And this cube has a collider. So if we remove that collider, we'll actually be able to walk through it. Let's get rid of that. Okay, let's have another go. So this is true volumetric fog. You can see as we move through it actually gets denser and then it gets lighter on the way out. Volumetric fog is fog that occurs within a particular container, and it's the type of effect that you see when you've got mist on the top of lakes or clouds in the sky. It's fog that's encapsulated within a particular shape. Now, as I just said, this is inside a sphere, so it's quite easy to calculate, and it's calculated using a shader. So it's a completely different sort of coding to the stuff we've looked at before and far more complex. And we're not actually going to look at this type of volumetric fog. I just wanted to explain what volumetric fog was because it's quite difficult coding-wise and mathematically-wise to create it other than spherical. Now, if you are interested, if I just quit out of here, you can see down in my project, I've got a file called sphericalfog.cs, and there's a shader called sphericalfog.shader, and I found these on the Unity forum and just brought them in so that you could see how they created volumetric fog. Now, the easiest way to create the effect of volumetric fog is to use a whole bunch of billboards and particle systems in which the image fakes volumetric fog. Now there's a really great little tool in the asset store that you can get for free, which is called the Clouds toy, and I've used this a number of different times. It's a fantastic resource, and considering it's free, it's just brilliant. Whilst we're talking about the asset store too, if you're interested in volumetric fog, you can type it in into the search and you will find a few downloadable assets that aren't free but do actually do all the shader calculations and give you proper volumetric fog. But for now we're just going to use this Clouds toy. So just import that into your project, and when you get the list of all the things that you need to import, there's one part that you should leave out because it may conflict with your code that's already in there. Now it's right down the bottom, and it's the scripts. So these scripts here, I'm not sure why they come with this Clouds toy because it's not needed. So just turn those off before you actually import the whole thing. Once that's finished importing, you can bring it into your scene. So let's go back to our scene. I'm going to get rid of this cube because we don't need that fog. And we'll have a look in the Clouds toy folder that was created, and there's a prefabs folder within that. And in that you'll find the Clouds toy. Now I'm just going to zoom out on my terrain that I created so that you can see what the Clouds toy does. Drag and drop the Clouds toy onto your terrain, And if we zoom out a little bit, you'll be able to see that it has two boxes. It has a blue box and a yellow box. Now the blue box is the area which the clouds will initially spawn in, and the yellow bit is where they will disappear once they've gone outside of this box and into here. And when new clouds are spawned, they're spawned inside the yellow area and they drift across into the blue area. So with the default settings, let's just play and have a look at what we get with our clouds. Right, so in the scene, you can see that the clouds have been created there. And if we have a little wander around in this environment, in the game view, you'll be able to see that we've got clouds in there as well, that are hanging like below the fog. They also provide an extra sort of foggy effect in the distance there, because they're essentially faking volumetric fog, even though they're a whole bunch of flat images. They're what are called billboards that look at the camera, and because they're always facing the direction of the camera, then they give the illusion that they have volume instead of being completely flat. Now, a single cloud isn't made up of one billboard, it's made up of a whole bunch. Right, so if I can just pause this while it's running, I can show you that. Under the clouds toy, you'll see that there's all these clouds that have been created, or I should say cloud puffs, I guess. If we double click on one and just zoom in on it in the scene, you'll see here all of those flat billboard images that have been used to make up one single cloud. And essentially fake volumetric fog. So that if we go back to play now, we can actually walk through these clouds. In this case, I guess they're a little bit hanging up a bit above the ground. But using the settings in the clouds toy, we can make the whole thing a lot thicker. So select the clouds toy that's in the environment, and then let's have a look at the different settings. We increase the number of clouds here. So I'm just ramp that right up and make them move a bit faster across the environment. So this is your velocity for the clouds, which is set to -10 to begin with. Let's put it up to -100, which will make it move quite quickly in the negative X direction. Okay, so let's run that, and we should have a lot more clouds so that they're a lot thicker. And you can see them moving across the scene. The nice thing about having these fake volumetric clouds is that we can put the skybox back in and remove the fog. So if we go back to the window lighting panel and down and untick the fog and select a skybox, also go to the first person controller's camera and set the background to skybox as well. Now you can see here that this skybox around here is a bit of a forest scene. Possibly not the best one to have picked for our snowy mountain scene, but it'll give you an idea anyway. So now when we play it, we'll get our clouds, but we can still see the sky. So it gives us a really nice effect of having a very distant, high up sky, but also having volumetric clouds moving through our environment. Now, if you want to, you can also change the color of the clouds in the clouds toy. There's some settings that you can change. So there's a cloud render setting where you can have realistic or bright clouds. There's also a different amount of detail. You can have high or low. And you can also change these presets if you want to have stormy, sunrise, or fantasy. And that will change the colors down here, which you can also just change by hand for different types of clouds. So if you wanted to create like an eerie green mist that goes across your environment, it's easy enough to add that in. So this is with that fantasy setting. It's now added some yellow fog that's going to move across the environment. Quite slowly, I might add, because it's set the velocity back to 10 when we change the type. So let's make that go in the other direction. Let's make it 100, and we could also make the main color of our clouds, say, green, and run that. Okay, so now we have sort of a green, eerie, nuclear looking fog coming across the landscape. And you can also see it moving across the top and through the trees. Okay, so that's the Clouds toy, which is free in the asset store. And there's a whole bunch of other settings that I'll let you play around with and have a look at. But it's a great way of adding in extra depth and realism into your scene other than just the fog, and without even the volumetric fog itself. So it's faking that, and it's also giving movement and realistic looking clouds. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and I'll talk to you next time.